Hey everybody, you are watching Conversations in Pop Culture, and I am your host, Andrew Davis. And we're going to just skip my entire sponsorship here because I have the legendary tag team, the Bushwhackers, Luke Williams and Butch Miller, as well as John Crowther. So welcome to the show, guys.
Whoa! Whoa! Andrew, and to be able to talk to all your nation out there.
Yeah, Andrew, thanks for having us.
Yeah, no, I am beyond excited to have. Obviously, John, you've been on it, and obviously got the Bushwhackers on. So how can I ever have a bad day if I'm having the Bushwhackers on? And one of the things that's going on, and just so my audience is well aware, is that you guys have your autobiography that just dropped. It is fully funded on Kickstarter at around $7,000+ It has 2 weeks left. Links in the description up above, and it is documenting your entire 50+ year, careers. And so I am very interested, before we dive into some of the stories and what the book entails, is how did this idea even come about? Because you guys are one of the last legendary tag teams in WWE ever. So what's the story of how this all came about?
You want to take that, Luke?
The way you go, John?
Okay, well, I can tell. Yeah, as some of you might know from being on the show before, for the last 7 or maybe 8 years, I've been writing biographical comics for a lot of pro wrestlers.
I can't even make you guys the same.
Well, we'll just keep going, and then we can hear you clear, Luke, or Butch. So once we get something to you, we can hear you just fine. So, but as I was saying, for the last 8 years or so, I've been doing these biographical comics, and Luke and I have become pretty close. We both live in Florida, and we do a lot of similar shows together and such. So I've been bugging Luke about doing a biographical comic, and then finally we got in a discussion about actually doing a for a lack of a better phrase, a real book, a prose book. So
John, you're talking about what you're talking about.
We're good though. We're good. We're good, Butch. Yeah. So Butch or Luke approached me about doing this. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. So sorry. So Luke approached me about doing this. I can't hear what Butch is saying. I'm sorry, Andrew. I can't get what Butch is saying.
Butch is an alien. All I'm getting. Butch is an alien.
He's an alien. So anyway, the book got started because Luke approached me. Luke approached me about it, and he connected me with Butch. And as you can see, Butch is a happy guy, and he's a lot of fun. And so that's how we got going. I mean, I've been doing the comics. COVID hit. Luke approached me, and then for the next about a year or so, we started on every Wednesday night, just like we are now, doing these video casts between each other. I think it was Butch who named it the three-way, and we would record them. Butch from New Zealand and Luke from down in Dunedin, Clearwater area, and that's how we got it going.
And we came up with the name Blood, Sweat, and Tears because in the early years there was a lot of blood involved. We were called them hardcore before hardcore became a name brand. And so the blood and the sweat, and then of course when we went to WWF and changed to the good guys, that's where the tears come in. And that's how the book came apart. That's how the name came together.
So let's even talk about this, because one of the things that is so interesting about this is that obviously the both of you have had an amazing career, going down from the Kiwis to pretty much the New Zealands to the sheep herders and going around the world. And so this book is dealing with a lot of the early days and some of the crazy stuff that happened to you guys as teams. And so I'm very curious, what does this book actually entail, and what does it cover and what doesn't it cover? Because that's something that people want to know, and people love wrestling history. And so what's the basic premise for those who are hearing about this for the first time and are huge wrestling fans?
Well, Andrew, we actually didn't go too heavy on our wrestling. We went more on our lives going through countries. We started together at 65, 66, the tag team. And after that, we went, we started doing Australia, we were in New Zealand. And at that time, New Zealand, it was run by the commission. The commission was the police. How's that? Rings had to be 20 feet, the ropes had to be 20 feet apart. There was 4 ropes and there were rounds, 8-minute rounds for the main event. And then the other matches were 8 6-minute rounds. And if you didn't do 30 or 40 minutes, the people were really upset, and the house would be at half the following time. What I mean, it'd be half a sellout, from the time before. So you had the people expected you to put in time, and it was rounds. You stop, and then you have the minute, like boxing, same thing. Anyhow, we started in New Zealand, and then a promoter who was well known in USA called Jim Barnett. He started in the late 50s, 60s, and he was the first to have coast-to-coast wrestling in the States. Well, he came down to Australia, bought out the roller derby, and put WCW wrestling on, World Championship Wrestling, the one that in the 2000 and in the 1990 to 2000 WCW, it's the same company, Jim Barnett's name, and that's when in New Zealand we never threw a punch or a kick. If you threw a punch or you kicked somebody, the police would open the ring and stop the fight. So when we were going across Australia, it was completely different. It was American style wrestling, punching and kicking and grabbing a hold. You know what I mean? We were doing in New Zealand, we were doing European wrestling. From hold to hold, switching stuff, no running to the ropes. It was a lot of groundwork. It was completely, really a different style. People, later on, people could see that sort of stuff on the wide world of sport, British wrestling. We never had TV in New Zealand till 68. And so, I started in 62, and that we just had posters and radio to promote shows. It was completely different. So when we went to Australia, that's when they first did kicking and punching, and we turned American style.
And so to even go further into this, because obviously, you come from New Zealand and then you were going through Australia, but then you started expanding outward in your career and you started going to Japan and then making your way essentially across. And then eventually you landed in what I think is the greatest run, which is from 1980 to about 1982, where you were going with guys like Roddy Piper and Rick Martel and Andre the Giant. And this is like the legendary career that you guys had. And so what was that like? Because that's when you were really becoming hardcore and you were doing handicap matches and no DQ matches and all these crazy matches. And so what was this like? Because this is what I think people know you guys for more than anything else.
Andrew, let me take you back. I was telling you about Jim Barnett in Australia, and that with him wrestling, we learned to punch and kick. Then we started going into Singapore and Bangkok up into Malaysia. At the time it was Asia and Malaya, and then it became Malaysia. But Penang and Kuala Lumpur and Singapore, and then Bush was on the first show for the guy that went to Cassius Clay, the wrestler against the boxer, Tony Inoki. Butch went up to Japan in 1970 and worked on the first show for Anoki. Anyhow, Andrew, I was leading Butch around in the 60s. I was leading Butch around on a chain and a collar. We were doing wild stuff from the 60s. And we met Andre. Andre came to New Zealand well before he came to USA, and Butch and me worked around the country. Gene Faree. We walked around New Zealand and handicap matches and tag matches. That was in the 60s.
Yeah, and then into the 70s, they were working with Andre throughout Canada. They went into Montreal and worked for the Vachons, and then into Calgary and worked for Stu Hart. They had a lot of strong runs even before they joined Piper in Portland.
Andrew, we were doing those wild matches of blood from the late 60s in the 70s and that, with Stu Hart and all that, Stampede Wrestling. So it wasn't until we came into more or less invaded the States heavier in 1979. That's when we invaded North America, heavy. And that's with the right, and we started with Roddy Piper and Rick Martel. We had a run with them for 14 months. At one time in that run, we had 22 consecutive sellouts on Saturday night, TV Saturday night. I never knew this, but Roddy told me. He lived in Portland, and that was one hell of a run there. We did good for about 16 months there, but we worked against Roddy and Ricky, and that we'd go into 6-mans with Buddy Rose, and then back into tags, and they would have that when Andre would come in as their partner, Jesse Ventura, all big names came in as Roddy and Ricky's partner there.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite stories from those. Oh, we got Butch.
Yeah,
I can hear a little bit now. I couldn't hear anything, but also I heard Luke talking about Portland, and that was the first place that Luke and I turned babyface. I don't know if Luke said this yet, but that was the first place that we turned babyface after being probably the most vicious heels that they'd ever seen in there. And we had Piper. I know we had Buddy Rose bringing in partner after partner to try and beat us as the baby faces.
He was the
when we gave our lead to Don Owens finally, he normally would say, "Oh, good, thank God," because everybody wants to camp out here. But with us, he bloody near cried because he said, "Guys, you're making us so much money. We want you to stay." But it was time to move on. So I'm sorry if I butted in, but I could hear Luke talking a little bit about that. I could sort of hear a bit of the conversation before I couldn't hear any whatsoever.
Well, I'm thrilled we got you back.
Yeah,
I'm just happy you guys showed up. So I'll take anything.
But you're not alien anymore. You're a human.
Well, one of my favorite stories from that period, which all this stuff is obviously in the book. I mean, we trace from their early childhoods all through their career, all the way up to the 2015 Hall of Fame induction. So it really encompasses their entire career as the Kiwis, as the Sheepherders, as the Bushwhackers. All of that's in there. But one of my favorite stories from right before they went to Portland was when they were wrestling in Hawaii, and they met Roddy Piper out there. And Roddy said, was talking to him, and they invites him to come to Portland. And they say, well, we got to get our visas. We don't have permission necessarily to wrestle in the States. Here they were in Hawaii. They didn't realize they were actually already in the United States. And I found that, really fascinating that these guys had been all over the country. And I guess Hawaii hadn't been a state that long, but here they were, actually had hit the States and hadn't actually realized it yet. But then they came from Hawaii into Portland, and boy, did they bust in and really make a name for themselves once they hit Portland.
Yeah, to even talk about this, because you mentioned something very interesting. is that obviously during this time period, I mean, you were selling out shows and you were in an amazing feud and selling out night after night, and you were making, you know, good money. And I mean, you guys were, and I hate to say it this way, but you were hated and slightly loved too. And what was that like? Because at this point in wrestling, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was no, I guess, decorum, for lack of a better word, where it was real and people were angry and people would storm the ring with the heels and they would, I guess, engage in violence. And what was that like? Because I mean, you guys were just getting under people's skin, and it's epic, and there's all these stories. And I don't want to talk about Puerto Rico because that's a dangerous place if you're a heel. But what was that like? Because going up against Roddy Piper and Rick Martel for 14 months, I mean, the crowd must have hated you guys. And that's just a perfect example of what a heel's supposed to do.
We had one hell of a run there because Roddy was a very trained for the business, and we had Buddy Rose as our flag bearer. You know, as soon as we came in, Buddy was a homesteader there. You know, he was from Minnesota, but he was very smart because he knew that we would give him longevity if he carried our flag, and he noted USA. You know, turned his back to USA and come under the New Zealand flag. That gave him more heat. And of course, it had, you know, give him a different run. You know, in his run, it gives him a different sort of character. You know, he was in our army, and that helped a lot too. Us having an American carrying our flag. That's what really pissed people off. You know, because they would talk and they would knock their own country.
I mean, I love it. I love it. And I just love the fact that what you guys did in this promotion, and then obviously going further, and obviously just going through NWA and everything you did there, and even leaving. And then I definitely want to talk about Puerto Rico, because there were some serious matches dealing with the Invaders down in Puerto Rico. And that's a dangerous, dangerous place. And all I know is that match, when I saw it, I was not ready for it. Is all I'm going to say.
Now, there's quite a few on YouTube, mate, but let me tell you the first time we went to Puerto Rico. We were actually working for Jim Crockett out of Charlotte, which was the biggest, I think it was the biggest in the country at the moment, and we were on Ted Turner Network. Now, we didn't realize that was satellite TV. That shows you that the business, that sort of thing, we didn't realize, and we gave our notice there, and nobody gives their notice to Jim Crockett. Jim Crockett says, you know, I'll finish you up at Christmas, and I'll give you 2 years off, and then I'll bring you back. He gives you his notice, but he sets it up to bring you back later on. Well, we gave him 2 months' notice, and he didn't like that at all. You know, the second week we were in NWA, we won the Mid-Atlantic belts, and it was something different. You know, we worked with Steamboat and Youngblood. We worked with Bill Eadie. Well, Bill Eadie was the superstar then, and Paul Jones. We worked with names that have, you know, that have been big, worked all over the place. You know what I mean? And then us giving our notice that Jim, he didn't understand, but we got a call from a good friend called Frenchie Martin, who was in New Zealand with us quite a bit. And he said, you know, we said, how much? He said, we need a tag team there. And we said, how much can we make? And he says he gave us a figure. And we were on the road for Jim Crockett, working 7 or 8 shows a week, 2 on Saturday or 2 on Sunday, and putting in 3,000 miles. All of a sudden, we're going to Puerto Rico, doing 200 miles a week, doing 4 shows in 3 days. So that was a big change, you know, and the money was better. So we went there. And the first, let me tell you, this was the intro, Andrew, to us in Puerto Rico. Carlos Colon he was the Hulk Hogan in Puerto Rico. They opened up WWC in 75, and it was hot. The only television show on the television, ratings were way up. 2 hours on Saturday at midday, 2 hours on Sunday at midday, television. So we the first day, instead of going in the back of the building like anyone else with the bags to the dressing room, Carlos was in the lobby where they sell the tickets and all the people come in, and he was at the table signing photos. Butch and me came in, so we had a guy carrying our bags, and we had our flag, and we came into that lobby. We split the flag. It was steam pipe with a joint where you could unscrew it. We split the flag pole, and we beat him up. We beat Carlos up with the flag, with the flag, and where there was a line of people waiting to get free photos signed by Carlos. And of course, Carlos, a big businessman, he was a hatchet man. I don't know if you know what a hatchet man is. The blood was all over the walls. We beat him up with a steam pipe. There was blood everywhere. And then we left him laying there because I don't know what happened. I think security came to the front door and got us away. And we went back to the dressing room. And the ambulance took him away. And that was our first entrance into Puerto Rico.
Yeah. That's how it's supposed to go. And my favorite match with Carlos and you guys was when you wrapped him up in barbed wire, and I thought that was insane. And like you rolled him, and just the crowd, and it was a very. Let's just put it this way: I did not expect it when I was watching it and seeing it, the violence and the intensity, and this puts hardcore into a whole new level. And I think a lot of people don't know that.
Andrew, Butch will tell you about a situation in Ponce where we knocked them both down and wrapped them up with barbed wire. You remember that, Butch, in Ponce? Butch.
I don't know if Butch can hear us.
Butch.
Hi.
Can you hear
I
Butch?
don't know what you're talking about, mate.
The time in Ponce when we wrapped the invaders
I can't hear anything.
Oh.
Okay, then I'll say it.
Yeah, so Luke can tell you, and
I can see you all.
So Luke can tell us, and we'll look at Butch's pretty face.
I'm gonna give you hey, Butch, I'm giving you the Winston Churchill. He's not even laughing.
I think there's a bad connection between here and New Zealand.
I can see that.
Okay, Andrew, we're in Ponce. We had a coal miner's glove. We had a coal miner's glove match. With the glove on the pole. In the end, they got the glove down in there. We got the glove, and we knocked them both down, sort of semi-conscious. We set them on the ass in the middle of the ring, back to back, and we got barbed wire. We had gloves on, or I had gloves on, and we wrapped barbed wire around them, right? So they were tied up, back to back with barbed wire. And I went around them about 15 times with barbed wire, and then bent it and hooked them up so they couldn't move. The more they moved, the more it ripped their skin. Right. All of a sudden, stuff started coming in the ring, like spark plugs. They sell limes out the door. Guys sell big bags of limes, that size, and they throw them. Puerto Ricans are good baseball players. Those limes are hard too. But Ponce, they threw spark plugs, and all of a sudden, they pulled a bank of hairs out. In the bleachers, there's about 4 chairs in a bank and it's screwed to the floor. The fans pulled their fucking 4 seats out and they came down on the floor and threw that in the ring. They ripped the seats off. This night they got really violent. And that night, of course, the police had to come in, cool it all down, and put us in police cars and take us outside of town. We couldn't get out the arena without getting in trouble, because we had situations before, before that, where they turned our car over, where they turned Hugo Savinovich, our manager's car over.
So, what is that like for you? Because that's a crazy story.
Yeah, but that was only one of them, mate. That was only one. This situation was hot. I got sliced a few times and had to go to court, because the people that sliced me, and then I grabbed them and dragged them, and then they took me to court for bruising and all that sort of stuff. But I don't want to get into that stuff. But the situations, the wild situations. Butch and me had to fight our way, especially in the ballparks, getting back into the dugout from the ring after the match. Going to the ring, we get pelted with stuff from behind, but coming back, they were red hot, and the boys the rest of the heels had to come out the dugout and help us get back to the dugout.
This is just mind-blowing to me, and I think people don't understand that in wrestling, that this is like the stories that make teams legendary. And this is why you guys are like a legendary tag team, because this is what's insane, and it's fascinating to watch it and going through it and getting under people's skin that way and just getting that heat. I mean, it's a skill beyond a skill, and it's bewildering to me that I don't think people realize. And I think when people read this book and even just some of these stories, they're gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, this is what we want to know as wrestling fans." And this is what I want to know as a wrestling fan, is that it's like these stories and the intensity. And I just think it's absolutely amazing. And I think it's just fantastic that it's actually being written now.
Butch, can you hear us, Butch? Butch.
Yeah, sadly, I think that we've got a poor connection to New Zealand. But Andrew, you nailed it. This book really goes into a lot of stories that today's wrestling fans, at least the younger generation, really have no idea about. I mean, we didn't have internet back then. We didn't have cable TV really broadcasting matches like they do now. And these guys were able to travel between territories, and some of the things they did and saw, people would be shocked to hear, and will be shocked when they read this book.
Yeah, mate. We had many times we had all the windows knocked out in our car and our tires sliced. And many times the police had to take us out of buildings because, we couldn't get out ourselves. It was scary. They have riots, semi-riots today, but the riots, just one person starts it and everyone jumps in. We had riots where the people were red hot. They'd been drinking alcohol, and the heat was, they just think they could come in. In the book, anyhow, a guy took a gun to the show, and someone else, you hear about this, and the guy is well known. He's a lawyer, and he's got a major podcast which it gets every month. It gets about 21 million followers. People see it, 21 million all out the world. And his dad took a gun to shoot me and Butch to the show. How's that? And his friends had to stop him. He was so mad at us.
It's so just wonderful to hear these stories. And obviously,
We actually
glad that you didn't pull the trigger. Clearly, I want to make crystal clear that I do not recommend anybody bring a gun and shoot a wrestler. I want to make that crystal clear here. But what is that even like? The fact that you just did that and people were doing that. This is what is ultra crazy, and it's finally nice to like hear these stories.
Right, you know, we did things that they can't do today. We actually did interviews, promos for a wrestling match on a grave, standing on a grave, and on the grave next door, we covered the plate over and put the opponent's name on the grave, and that in a cemetery. And I think that shit like this made the people really mad, especially in Catholic countries, you know, religious countries. Doing interviews on a grave on a grave and all that sort of stuff. We did a lot of crazy crucifixion on the side of a cage. You know, we tied the guy up with barbed wire on the side of the cage with his arms out, just like Jesus on the cross. I don't know whether the people see back then. They weren't told the whole story, and they were believers. You know what I mean? Because they saw blood and a battle every night. They didn't see all this gymnastic stuff today. We didn't. The matches, we never had that gymnastic stuff. We fought. We battled, Andrew.
Yeah, and even to go into that a little bit, because this is one of the things too, is that obviously wrestling evolves over time, and different styles and different things have come in. But I mean, you two were brawling, and a lot of the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, and even going into the 1990s in your career. I mean, you guys were fighters in a lot of ways. And what was this like? Because I think that's an element of wrestling that's missing today. Is that sometimes it doesn't feel like it's a big fight. And every match that you guys were in was a fight. It was a war. And, that's something that I think is somewhat missing in wrestling. And it's like that fight. Like every once in a while when I'm watching wrestling, I get the sense that there's a fight going on. And I think it's a real art when you get that big sense in it. And a lot of your matches have that.
Andrew, we built these stories from a single match, and then we do finish, or be a double count out or whatever. Then we would go and do a time limit match, and then a DQ match, and then maybe a lump, and we'd get the baby faces would come back and we would run out. So next time we'd come back with a lumberjack match. We told stories in that lumberjack match, and we do situations where we got out of the situation still holding the belts, but the baby faces were on top. So next minute would be a cage match. We'd build, this is going over 2 months, building that story to get to the cage match. And then after the cage match, we do a boot camp match all over the building. And then finally we do the barbed wire match or a fire match. That's how the story went. And so we're going through that and getting away with it all the time and getting away with it, and that the babyface not winning, and then finally the big match at the end, the babyface goes over. But that's what got the heat, because we never got beaten. We kept the belts. You know what I mean?
And over that time, they were really able to build relationships with the fans, and build these stories. So it's a lot different than today.
Yeah, it's so different in which today, Andrew, today the promoters just go for ratings on television. So they may do something at the start of the show. By the end of the show, they're blowing it off. They're blowing it off. They haven't built it to go to the next week, because they're worried about ratings.
Yeah, and I think it even goes further. I mean, even on the indies right now, I think a lot of stuff isn't really story built. I mean, the last good story I've seen is a wrestler named by Megan Bain. And Megan Bain, I think, is still undefeated. And, it's just that every opponent, she's undefeated. and they keep on bringing bigger and better opponents to her, and women opponents, and whoever beats her, it's like a build up to when who beats her is going to be the next superstar. But like, she's on that trajectory, but like and like, she's got a little bit of a cheating element in her, and it's great. But like, I agree where it's just like, it's completely ratings. And even with like things like IWTV, I feel like they are also looking at ratings just on an internet level, and it's a real problem where there's no real direction, I feel.
Yeah, see, we did a similar situation going right back to the 70s. You know, the commissioner would come, we'd be so violent, the commissioner would come in the ring and go to fire us. And the commissioner was usually an ex-wrestler or a promoter's father, the promoter's father. And he come to ban us, and then we would lay him out with a coal miner's glove. And of course, and they're always in the 70s of age. They've been wrestlers and well known on that television. And we'd lay them out, and that, and you know, there'd be blood. Of course, the old guys, there'd be blood, and of course, they'd be carried out. And then the promoter would turn around and start bringing teams in, like the Road Warriors, the Drambuie Express. You know, they were two big guys, 350, bringing Dusty and Blackjack Mulligan. That's how we worked these situations in every territory we went to. I was a booker in quite a few of them, so that's why I had control of the situation. But that's how we built this, and we drew big money. Promoter would be working with the local tag team during the week. I have an angle going, but then we'd do something to them, and then they would bring in the promoter, say, fuck it, and he'd bring in the Road Warriors or bring in somebody, you know, and that's what kept us hot all the time.
Yeah, and it also has built your entire career. It's made you a legendary team, because when you go through the Road Warriors, you go through the Rock and Roll Express, you go through a variety of other teams. You know, the Fantastics is another good team to drop. And this is what, you know, and then a lot of these teams wound up coming in and out of WWE and bigger promotions and New Japan and things of that nature. And obviously all the big promotions at the time. And this is what really, I think, made you legendary. And then, you know, just to fast forward, I mean, in '89, going into the 90s, you signed with WWE, at the time WWF. And what was that like? Because now you're arguably one of the hottest tag teams on the market. And obviously WWF, now WWE, is starting to get bigger ratings. And a lot of people have gone through them. And so what was that like? Because now, you know, that's a really big platform. And to me, the way I view it is that that's just icing on the cake for your career at that point.
Yes, definitely was, mate. And the funny part was when we came in and he said to us, you want to, you know, I'd like to have you as the baby faces. Of course, I, being an old school guy, I said, bring us in as heels and turn us baby faces. And that's when I learned you don't tell Caesar what to do. Caesar's Vince. And a lot of people said to us, you know, because we were blood hard teams, you know, hardcore and a bloody team, and a lot of the wrestlers said to us, how could you go from that to be two clowns? And that was easy. You know, we went from being wrestlers in NWA to being celebrities in WWF. Vince makes you a celebrity.
Yeah, and you had some great matches. One of my favorite things was the Doink situation is one of my favorite things, because I just think it's hilarious.
And you know, they quote that as one of the worst matches ever in a pay-per-view.
I mean, I loved it, and looking back, if you go into it looking like it's fun, because that to me is what wrestling is. That's the whole thing in which I just thought it was funny. I thought it was enjoyable.
Entertaining. We made that very entertaining, and that. But you know, that guy that writes the dirt sheet, he gave us 5 stars in matches as heels, and now he wrote up and said one of the worst pay-per-view matches. But That was his idea. What's his name now? Meltzer.
Oh, Meltzer, yeah.
But everybody loved it. As you said, that you loved it. It was entertaining. Everybody in the match was a true professional.
Yeah, and honestly, I think the move to becoming a face team, becoming the Bushwhackers, it really extended their careers. I mean, if you follow the sheep herders or Bushwhackers, whatever you want to call them, by the time they hit the WWF, they were already in their 40s, if I'm correct, Luke.
Yeah.
So imagine Luke started wrestling at the age of 17. He had already had 23 years in the ring at least before he even hit the WWF. And I say 24 years. We're talking 24 years of wrestling, twice a night, or every night, sometimes twice a night,
16.
and doubles on weekends, and hardcore.
My first match was when I was 16.
16. So think about that. Almost 34 years he'd already been in the ring before he hit the WWF. The wear and tear on his knees, the hitting with barbed wire and all those brawls and riots. By the time they hit the WWF, I think Vince did them a favor. I mean, by giving them a role where they didn't have to take that hard stuff anymore.
That's what he said to us. I'm going to make it easier for you. And that now, Andrew, he gave us the name, but we come up, Butch. We used to always swing our arms when we were outside. When we're heels, we whoa and yay. We always scream whoa and yay as heels and swing our arms up to try and scare the people. But Butch said to me, "Let's swing our arms going to the ring." And Butch said, and I says, "Oh, my shoulders are fucked." And you know what Butch said to me? "You want to make fucking money?" So we come up with the Bushwhacker character. The Butch was the one that came up with the arm swinging and all that. So there we are.
Because I think it's just great, and I think that's the whole thing. Is that obviously I think, and John,
That's what people remember, Andrew. People don't remember the wrestling; they remember the character.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because honestly, that's what I remember. And obviously, I came in a little bit later as a wrestling fan, but I went backwards. And it's the character of the Bushwhackers that I remember more than anything else. Versus, the matches where you come out, you're funny, you're relatable, you're licking each other to some degree. It's funny, and it's nice to see comedy in wrestling. It's nice to see matches where you guys are coming out with the arm swing, your music's hitting. And I think that's something that is just absolutely just wonderful in that regard. And it's also, again, it was just kind of fun. And that's what this team was at this point. And even just transitioning from being that hardcore to now being a fun tag team and having a blast in WWF. Is really how I view a lot of your matches going back on Peacock now.
Yeah. I can honestly say, as a fan of wrestling, I became a fan of wrestling in the early 70s or mid 70s. And I remember the Bushwhacker, the sheep herders coming through Florida. I grew up here in Florida with Championship Wrestling from Florida. And I remember them coming through. I remember their debut in the WWF. I was a teenager at that point. And a lot of the young people today, or a lot of the fans of wrestling today, don't realize the pop that would hit when that Bushwhacker music would drop in the WWF. Their pop was greater than any wrestler in the WWE today. I mean, people who didn't experience that can't really understand the enthusiasm that would hit the crowd when the Bushwhackers would hit the ring. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Yep. Hulk had the biggest coming out from the curtains. But when we come out the curtains with that music, everybody stood up. Everybody was stood up in the arena and was doing this.
You had baseball teams doing it all the way to the mound. You had NFL players doing it in the end zone. I mean, it was hot.
Yep, it was hot.
And to even go further, because you mentioned that, Vince sort of makes people celebrities. And one of the funny things is that, I don't know if many people know this, but you appeared on an episode of Family Matters. And that's something that I think people also don't realize, is that that's a step outside of wrestling. And that's a step into people's homes who are not wrestling fans. And so what was that like, getting that opportunity too? Because now you're going into a whole new medium and you're reaching an even bigger audience. And you're already a celebrity. You already had a fantastic career. Your WWE career is going well at this point. And now you're in, a pretty interesting family-friendly demographic television show. I don't know if that just cost.
I think you scared Luke away.
Yeah, clearly.
There he is. I was going to let Luke address that. Obviously, we cover that. We cover that in the book as well. I mean, one of the sections of the book actually does talk about celebrity encounters, and we talk about the Bushwhackers time on Family Matters, on the on different talk shows. One of the funniest is they did a lot of charity work, obviously, for the WWF, became the WWE at that point too. Appearances, at the annual Easter egg hunt for at the White House. Which I don't want to, I think you're somewhat family friendly, but, they got to lick Clinton's pussy, and that comes up, obviously, in the book. Celebrity softball games, appearances at different baseball games throughout the country. I mean, they were huge. They were really, really huge. So, and I don't know what happened to Luke. I think we lost him. Oh, here he goes. There he is. Hey, Luke, Andrew was asking you about your appearance on Family Matters.
Yeah, now Andrew, that's why I was starting to talk, and someone rang me, and I went down. Anyhow, Andrew, that was in 1994, and they were still playing that episode in 2018, 2019. That was
I'm still stuck on the White House.
Yeah, tell them what you did at the White House, Luke.
I had Butch. The Clintons were in power at the time, and they had a cat, and the guy was walking the cat around in the White House. We were outside there doing the Easter egg hunt, and the guy had the cat on a leash and was walking around the cat, and Butch picked the cat up and looked at it and then gave it a big lick, and the word we put it on the internet. Butch is the only one to lick Clinton's pussy.
There goes my sponsorship money right there. It just went right down. Oh my gosh!
Don't forget, Andrew. We're from down under, and we do a lot of licking. You know what they tell me today? Because I'm a bushwhacker. But you know what they tell me? And when I say I'm a bushwhacker from down under, they say I'm shaved.
Well, this is definitely a close shave of an interview.
Sorry if it's the kids. We have to beat that out for the kids. But I'm just telling you. But honestly, I say that, especially when they got the husbands with them.
My show is rated NC-17, so I'm all good. You could say whatever you want on my show. but that is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things I could say, but in the book, you have to read the book because there's a lot of dirt. A lot of, it's not so much we're talking about wrestling with you, and we do touch that in the book, but a lot of situations that happened that, you got to read it anyhow.
You got to read the book. I mean, there's a lot of, there's a lot of things, untold stories that you'll find in the pages of the book, from all the way from New Zealand all the way up to the Hall of Fame, things that you have never been talked about. Outside of closed doors.
World, Panama Canal, Colombia, different countries, mate. There's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, a lot of places.
Well,
Especially
I'm going to take a
in
stab here.
in Singapore in Boogie Street. You've never heard of Boogie Street, but you read about it in the book.
Absolutely. I can honestly tell you, as writing the book, that for a year and a half, these two guys had me rolling. And all those tales that they told me are in the pages of this book. I mean, people are really going to enjoy it. I really believe it.
This is one of the things that, I think is really interesting. So obviously, I think it's hilarious that one of you licked Clinton's pussy. I think that's funny. And I thoroughly find that to be very funny, but I also find that to be probably on the tamer side in this book. And so if that is just the peak of the dirt that's going to be spilled in this book, obviously it's going to be very fun. It's going to be a good read. I'm excited for it. I think I'm backer number 47. So I'm super
thank you, Andrew. Thank you for that. Yeah.
When you told me about it, I'm like, I'm going to back this. It's going to be great. And it's going to be a fun book to read. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
But
at the start, it's about how New Zealand started in wrestling. John really went deep and dug there to let the people know about this country going back in the 1920s, 30s in New Zealand, the wrestling. So you get a bit of that old wrestling at the start, and then when we get into the parts with us. It takes a different sort of leap, doesn't it, John?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's important for people to understand, really, you have to know the history of New Zealand wrestling to know the history of Luke and Butch, and to understand that the initial type of wrestling that they did is absolutely nothing like wrestling today. And then they moved into more of a hardcore style, which is, again, nothing like today. And then they became more of an entertaining wrestling team. So they were two guys that over 50 years were able to transform themselves and wrestle all different styles all around the world, over 60 countries, over 17,000 matches these guys wrestled. And it's really remarkable. Something else, I don't know, we're probably getting towards the end of the show, but something I did want to stress, we're closing in for people who have already backed and for people who are considering backing. We've already gotten everybody one stretch goal, and what stretch goals are, if you're not used to Kickstarter, are little bonus perks that you get at no extra cost once you back the campaign. So we've already far surpassed the first stretch goal. We are, I think, about $140 or maybe $150 shy of our second stretch goal. So, encourage your friends. If you've already got a book, tell them to pick themselves up a copy. Get yourself an extra one. As Dusty Rhodes would have said back in the day, call mama from the kitchen, call grandpa from the backyard, get everybody in here, get them all a book. Christmas is coming up. There's some really fun stories in here. If you're a fan of wrestling, if you're a fan of the Bushwhackers, if you're a fan of the Sheep Herders, if you're a fan of Los Pastores from Puerto Rico, if you're a fan of the New Zealand Kiwis, I mean, it's all in here, and it is really entertaining.
And one of the things I just want to say, and I'm going to show the cover. So this is the regular cover. I think this is a variant cover that you can pick up. And also one of the things is that obviously, the Bushwhackers are all over the place, for lack of a better word, physically location. And so getting autographs sometimes with your favorite wrestlers could be a pain in the ass. And so this campaign does something that's very helpful where both, you get Butch and Luke signing your book and on a book plate. And so that's another thing too, is that, at some point you might be able to get this book somewhere else off the Kickstarter, but you're not going to be able to get an autograph.
No, yeah, and like Andrew's mentioning, Butch lives in New Zealand and Luke is here in the States, so the ability to get both guys on a book is not going to be easy. But through this campaign, you can get these books signed by both Butch and Luke. That the variant cover that Andrew showed, there will only be 50 copies of that book ever made available to the public. So this is a really good opportunity to get a fantastic collectible it's a one of a kind, or 50 of a kind, I guess I should say.
And I've got to say this, John, Butch and me have never done a signing together in the US. when we were after WWE, and that's 97 to 2002, we just worked independent shows, and we signed photos at half time at the shows. But we never, there was no conventions, you know, none of these signings like we have today. So Butch and me have never done a professional signing anywhere in the country. So if you get this book, this is more or less the first of us two, and you know, doing a signing together.
Yeah, and it's a really unique opportunity.
And Butch is going to be here next year. We've got 30 dates around the country signing, and so we hope to have him here next March, end of March and April. And also, folks, I'm still in we're getting away from the book, but I'm just telling you, I'm still in the ring, and this weekend I'm not in the ring, but I'm at a big 2-day event or 3-day event in Albany, New York. The second ever International Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame weekend. It's in Albany, New York, and there's a lot of names are going to be there, like Dory Funk Sr., Terry, sorry to say, but we've got a video of him, and that because he's in a home in Texas. But there's Ted DiBiase there. There's Japanese wrestlers there. There's this is a big thing, the International Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame in Albany, New York, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. If anyone's interested in going there, you can go online and go to International Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. Andrew, when does you have the show broadcasted?
Oh, it's live. We're live right now, and it's live right now, and it's going to be available in like 5 minutes after. And it's all over the place.
Go to my Instagram or Facebook page. It's Bushwhacker Luke, and it's got the world. It's got the around world, and it's got Bushwhacker brand, and it's got my head in the middle. Then you know it's my site, and you'll see about this weekend, the activities this weekend. I wish, John.
Yeah.
I wish I had a stack of books with me for this event. But
yeah, I know. But hey, tell everybody at the Hall of Fame to go on the Kickstarter and pick up a copy.
Yes, I'm going to.
So,
of course, I'm going to.
I want to just reiterate a point, and then I'm going to let everybody, I guess promote their stuff. This book, from my understanding, is done. The printing is not done yet, but it's going to get done. Yeah. I am a little confused. Is it this December or is it the December after?
For this book?
Yeah, this book.
Oh no, the campaign is going to end, I believe, on September the 8th. Once those figures come through, for people who have worked with Kickstarter, you have to understand Kickstarter takes a portion out. So I kind of have to wait until they get their fee out. I'll know how many books we're ordering. I'll send that order off. There have been some issues around the world with printers, but our printer is probably the largest printer of books in the world. So I'm not too concerned about that. Once I send the order off, I anticipate having the books in my hands within about 2 to 3 weeks after the Kickstarter ends. I'll immediately start shipping them out. I hope to have them to everybody by November at the latest.
I'm asking, right, John?
Yeah.
I'm asking a question, not because I don't know the answer, but people
for fans out there. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you back this Kickstarter, you're going to have it before Christmas, guaranteed.
Don.
Yeah.
Cut the bloody potatoes out and get to the meat. When is it going to be on Amazon?
On Amazon, hopefully. Again, I have to kind of play with it a little bit. Depending on how our printer works and we can get these out for Kickstarter, my plan is to have it on Amazon by November. I want people who don't do the Kickstarter to be able to get it for Christmas. But again, I urge people to do the Kickstarter because that way you can get the autographed copies. You can get some of the other perks that are available on there. So the price won't be that much different, honestly. So it by doing the Kickstarter, you'll get the book early and you'll get an opportunity to get some signed ones.
And also there's some shout outs and there's some other things too that
Absolutely.
obviously you can't get otherwise. I don't know if there's still some autograph stuff that's potentially up there. I know there was some cards and some other stuff that might all be sold out, but I don't know. But again, you know, things may or may not appear at anywhere. And also there's some stretch goals that, you know, obviously there's a digital thing. And so if you back it on Kickstarter, you get that. And then I don't know if you got something around 10,000 maybe coming down.
Yeah, we've got something coming at 7,500, and my plan is to have another something at 10,000. Those stretch goals at 7,500 and 10,000 will be physical rewards. They will not be digital rewards. So there's some pretty cool incentives that are going to be coming out for backers of the physical level.
And also, I'm going to say this too, is that if you support on Kickstarter, you're helping to make an indie project happen. And that's the other thing too, is that, you know, whether it's cheaper or a little bit more expensive on Amazon, if you back it on Kickstarter, you're part of a community, you get to be part of the process. And even if you're just getting a regular copy that's not signed, you are making it happen. And it is a very cool experience to watch something get funded, especially when you back it at like 1,500 and then you watch the thing rise up all the way up. It's a lot of fun. So obviously, you know, and if you're worried about Kickstarter, honestly, you know, you could hit anybody up. You could hit me up. You could hit John up. And I'm more than happy to walk anybody through who's a wrestling fan and needs help with Kickstarter and figuring it out. I am more than happy to help you out on that point. Because if you've never been on Kickstarter, I get that it can be scary and it's a trust issue sometimes. So, but this book is done. And
yeah, book is completely done. I've got my preview copy, so it's already been proofread. Everything is ready to go. Only thing we're waiting for is the number of books to order. So we're good to go.
Yeah, and I'm working every weekend around the country and Canada. If you go to my site, you'll see where I'm going to be. And from November onwards, I'll be carting a truckload of books with me to every town. So you can come to me at shows or conventions and you can buy a book and it'll be signed right in front of you by yours truly.
And so on that note,
I've got to pack up now because I'm going to go to another meeting. It's been great being with you.
So Luke, before you go, social media, where can people find you? Just once again, all that stuff, because that's where we're going to end right now. So where can people find you? Social media, hit you up, bother you, all that fun stuff.
Luke, you want to go first?
I'm ready to leave, mate.
Okay, well, he's asking where they can find you on social media.
On Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You can catch me on all three. There's a lot of Bushwhacker Lukes, but my one is with the head on the world, and it's got a brand.
Hey, Luke, do you have an OnlyFans page? Do you have an OnlyFans page yet?
What for?
Okay, never mind. I guess you don't. So you can find Luke on Facebook.
I've got two Facebook pages. I knocked one off, the fan one, because I'm just concentrating on one, followings.
Absolutely.
And then you and also got a website with merchandise, bushwhackerluke.com. And of course, I'm on Cameo. I'm on quite a few other promo things. If you need a shout out, you'll catch me on quite a few of them. I can't even think of the names. I can't even think of the names now, but Cameo's the main one.
Just Google Bushwhacker Luke. You'll find him all over the place. Yeah. Me personally, you can find me John Crowther on Facebook, John E. Crowther, writer on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter. I have a writer page on Facebook also, John E. Crowther, comic book writer. Even though this is not a comic book, this one is a prose autobiography. You can also find we've got a Bushwhackers Blood, Sweat, and Cheers page on Facebook that you can follow some of the stuff we're doing on there as well.
And you can also find him in a law office in a little town that I've never heard of.
Shh. Yeah, don't tell anybody that. I'll be getting requests for legal advice. But yeah,
No, we're going to get your business, mate.
Hey, yes.
Well, I don't know if
Hey guys, he's a divorce lawyer, but he only works with trans cases.
And to give my sponsorship, just went right down. Just right down.
Right down the gutter.
I don't know if Butch can hear us, but if you can, I don't know what Butch's social media looks like.
Yeah, Butch isn't really on social media that much. He's on Facebook. His name is Bob Miller on Facebook, and you can follow Butch there. And he does share a lot of our posts and do some of his own about the book, about his career, and such. I don't think he can hear us right now, though, but I am glad that he's been watching us.
Hey, Butch, you no good SOB. Can you hear me? Yes, he heard me. you know, Andrew, Butch and me are like brothers. You know, we've been together for so long, 66 to 202. I don't want to go into the situation how I found them in the 201, 202, but it was a heavy situation.
Yeah, and it'll be in the book. It's in the book.
I only had an hour, guys. I only had an hour, or a little under an hour, or a little over an hour at this point. And obviously, I don't want to ruin everything in this book. I'm excited to read it, and I'm stoked for it. I don't know what's in the book yet. I know it's done, and I know in like 2 weeks, I'm going to be getting a copy of that digitally as well as physically. So there you go. But I don't know who wants the last word.
Whoa, this is Bushwhacker Luke saying, I'm out. See you guys later. Yay!
I think that's a wrap. That's a wrap. Everybody go back to the book and go back to the book now. It's in the link in the notes, and it's going to be an excellent book, and I think everybody's going to be happy that they bought it and they read it and they enjoy it. And if you don't, I don't know what to tell you.